So how did you do? Are you getting the hang of loops and arrays? Here's the solution that I came up with. I created an array called required fields, and I put the different values that I wanted to be required into that array. And then I said for each of those values, as field name, go through and check to see if the post variable for that field name exists. And I don't need quotes around it there because I'm not talking about the string. I'm talking about the variable pointing to a string. Or if it's empty, then put that field name into errors. And so that'll loop through all three of mine. So now I've got something that's reusable. I could actually put it into a function called something like check required fields and pass in my required fields to it. And then it becomes very flexible and I can reuse it. So we can develop these bits of form validation that we can reuse as developers over and over again. In fact, I'm going to show you another one that I went ahead and created. I've created one that checks the lengths. And I've said for fields with links, and I created an associative array with a menu name and a length is 30. Now this is maximum lengths that we're talking about. So I've said that for each field with links as field name and maximum length, do the same kind of check. I'm going to trim out any white space and then check the string length to see is it larger than the maximum length allowed. And if so, I'm going to add an error. Now we could add more information to these errors as well. We could put in associative information. Something like the problem was with this field name and here's what the problem was. But right now, we've got the beginnings of some form validation that's going to help us and that we can put into functions that we can reuse. In fact, what I would suggest is that you actually create a separate page. In addition to our functions, create one that's called form functions. And go ahead and we'll start including that whenever we have a form or form validation, and it can perform these actions for us. Now, I want to reiterate the problem that we have with this single-page processing approach right now. Because we don't have more advanced skills about how to pass information from one page to another yet, we're a little limited in what happens when we do that redirect. And as a result, what the errors were gets discarded, and the form data that was submitted gets discarded. And let's say we had a very long form with 50 fields. The users would have to retype all the information in all 50 fields again because the information did not get sent back over again. It'd be a lot better if we could preserve it. So there's several ways that we can work around that. The form could submit to itself so that then the errors can be displayed when we get further down the page. Or a special error output page could be shown here that would tell us what those errors were. Or we could store errors into our session variable. We learned about sessions earlier. And then we could retrieve them on the new page. And then we'd be able to retrieve those on the page when we went back. And any of the three approaches would help solve the problem. The one I want to look at is how to make the form submit to itself so that all of this form validation and error checking is done at the top of the page, and then we can display the results at the bottom of the page. And that's going to come in very handy when we start doing updates. And that's what I want to look at next, is how we can do that third part of CRUD. We do create and we can do read. How do we do updates? And that'll answer some of these questions on how to handle forms better.